First off, in Santo Domingo, where I'm staying, there's not a lot of farming. It is more urban farming. So the biggest technique that I've seen is urban farming. So things like old tires or pots, specifically like one pot, not a bunch of pots, but one pot that they mainly use to plant herbs, especially because they do not have the option of the main crops being directly in the ground in the city. The crops are more outside of the city. The second technique is importing from other places outside of the city or other places. So like a lot of times they'll have markets, but that doesn't mean that it's coming from places in the city that are practicing agriculture. It's more being imported. I would say I mainly have an appreciation for the countryside itself more because of how much I've been in a city. I've also gained an appreciation for a culture that does not complain about what they don't have. Instead, they use what they do have. And I simply also like that they help each other out. An example is the Mango Festival, because other countries are coming out to share what they have grown, because the mangoes come from all over the world. I also like how they keep the teaching aspect. So while they're not teaching like grazing and stuff like that, they are still teaching their families how to be self-sustainable with things like growing the crops on top of the roof and pots, tires, basically whatever they can find. So these are all the things that I appreciate. So it's very different than how I grew up, because I grew up in the country where all I ever knew was farming being done in fields with tractors. Here, it's not necessarily that. It's also the variety is different. So like where I'm from in Georgia, we mainly grow peaches, cotton, nuts, that sort of thing. Here, they don't have peaches or nuts, and especially I don't think that they have cotton. Yeah. From what I've heard from locals, they don't do cotton here. That is something that would be imported in from somewhere like the States. But it's also because they don't eat as much, or they don't use as much cotton, and they don't eat things like peaches or nuts. They eat a lot of rice, so they do have fields in that sense, but again, they're outside of the city, so it's not where I've been. I've been more in the city part. So that's why it's just very different from where I grew up. I think overall TFC does a really good job at the farm of the urban farming part, especially because we have the herb spiral. So that's a very good method of how we're doing that. I think for me, I would mainly just want to see the quality of the food better. And I think the quality of food is better here because of where they are growing stuff, like in fields. The soil is it's healthier. And there's also things like the climate has a big part of it. They're able to grow things out a little bit longer, whereas we aren't necessarily able to do that in the States. So just keeping all of this in mind. But overall, I didn't really get to see a lot of farming. It was done mainly on rooftops. But it was still good to see, and I still learned from it. So